The rise of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, often referred to as MBS, marks a pivotal moment in the history of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. He is a figure who commands both admiration and controversy, praised for his ambitious vision to modernize the kingdom, yet criticized for his human rights record and aggressive foreign policy decisions. His leadership has brought about unprecedented change, making him one of the most talked about global leaders today. This is the story of his rise to power, the reforms he has implemented, the foreign alliances he has forged, and the complex geopolitical landscape he navigates. Saudi Arabia, the kingdom long defined by its oil wealth and conservative social structures, is on the brink of massive change. At the heart of this transformation is MBS, a young, energetic, and ambitious leader who has sought to redefine his country for the 21st century. But with this transformation comes both hope and uncertainty. Can MBS's vision succeed without destabilizing the very foundation of the Saudi state? And will the Crown Prince's approach to governance and foreign relations secure a stable future for the kingdom, or push it into further conflict? To answer these questions, we need to delve deeply into MBS's background, the socio-political landscape he inherited, and the reforms and policies that have come to define his leadership. From his controversial economic initiatives and Vision 2030 program to his handling of foreign relations and human rights issues, we will explore the multifaceted nature of his rule. Mohammed bin Salman's journey to becoming the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is nothing short of extraordinary. Born on August 31, 1985, MBS is the son of King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. His father, Salman, has been a significant figure in Saudi politics for decades, holding various governmental roles, including the governorship of Riyadh for over 40 years. While MBS was born into one of the most powerful families in the world, he was far from the obvious choice for the throne in his early years. MBS grew up in the royal palace, receiving an education steeped in the conservative religious and political traditions of Saudi Arabia. However, unlike many members of the royal family, he did not receive formal education abroad but instead studied law at King Saud University. His education, combined with his early exposure to the inner workings of Saudi governance, gave him a unique perspective on the challenges facing the kingdom. Before 2015, MBS was relatively unknown outside of Saudi Arabia. The kingdom's leadership was dominated by older, more traditional princes, many of whom were his uncles or distant relatives. The Saudi royal family, known as the Al Saud family, has ruled Saudi Arabia since its founding in 1932. The kingship traditionally passed from one son of the founder, Abdulaziz ibn Saud, to another, maintaining a form of gerontocracy within the royal family. However, things began to change in 2015 when King Salman ascended to the throne after the death of his half-brother, King Abdullah. One of King Salman's first major decisions was to appoint his son, Mohammed bin Salman, as the Minister of Defense, making him one of the youngest defense ministers in the world at the age of 29. This marked the beginning of MBS's rapid rise to power. MBS's ascent was meteoric by Saudi standards. Within 2 years of becoming defense minister, he had consolidated significant power. His first major move came in 2015 when Saudi Arabia intervened in the Yemen civil war under his leadership. This intervention, which we will explore in greater detail later, established MBS's reputation as a bold and decisive leader, willing to take risks to protect Saudi interests. But his most significant move came in 2017, when King Salman appointed him as Crown Prince, replacing his cousin, Mohammed bin Nayef. This was a seismic shift within the royal family, as MBS bypassed many more experienced and established princes. To ensure his grip on power, MBS orchestrated a series of internal purges that targeted potential rivals, including some of the most powerful princes and business elites in the country. In a highly publicized event, MBS detained several prominent figures at the Ritz-Carlton in Riyadh, accusing them of corruption and forcing them to surrender significant assets. This move, while controversial, solidified MBS's control over the kingdom. By the end of 2017, it was clear that MBS was not just the crown prince in name but the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia. King Salman, though still officially the head of state, had delegated most of the day-to-day running of the kingdom to his son. From the beginning of his ascent, MBS has presented himself as a reformer and modernizer. He understood that Saudi Arabia could not continue to rely solely on oil revenues in the long term. The kingdom's economy, society, and global standing needed a transformation. To achieve this, MBS launched an ambitious program known as Vision 2030, which sought to diversify the economy, reduce dependence on oil, and promote social reforms. The groundwork for this transformation was laid in 2016 with the announcement of Vision 2030, an economic and social reform blueprint that set out ambitious goals for the future of Saudi Arabia. The plan was bold, and its objectives were clear: to transform Saudi Arabia into a global investment powerhouse, diversify its economy, and reduce its reliance on oil. At the heart of this vision was a drive to modernize Saudi society, encourage private enterprise, and attract foreign investment. Vision 2030 is the cornerstone of MBS's domestic policy, and its success or failure will likely define his legacy. The plan is designed to reshape the Saudi economy and society by reducing the kingdom's reliance on oil, which has been the backbone of the Saudi economy for decades. The collapse of oil prices in the mid-2010s served as a wake-up call for Saudi Arabia's rulers, demonstrating the need for a more diversified economy. Saudi Arabia is home to some of the largest oil reserves in the world, and oil has long been the driving force behind its economy. However, the global shift towards renewable energy, coupled with volatile oil prices, has made it clear that this dependence is not sustainable in the long run. MBS recognized that Saudi Arabia needed to prepare for a post-oil future. Vision 2030 aims to reduce the kingdom's reliance on oil by developing other sectors of the economy, such as tourism, entertainment, finance, and technology. The partial privatization of Saudi Aramco, the state-owned oil giant, was one of the most high-profile components of this strategy. In 2019, Saudi Arabia sold a small portion of Aramco's shares on the public market, raising billions of dollars. The proceeds from the sale were intended to fund other parts of Vision 2030, such as the development of megaprojects like NEOM. One of the most ambitious components of Vision 2030 is NEOM, a $500 billion megacity that MBS envisions as a technological and economic hub for the future. NEOM is designed to be a futuristic city, powered by renewable energy, with cutting-edge infrastructure and innovation at its core. Located in northwestern Saudi Arabia along the Red Sea, NEOM is expected to attract businesses and investors from around the world. MBS has described NEOM as a symbol of Saudi Arabia's transformation and a key part of the kingdom's future. The city is envisioned to be a hub for advanced industries, including biotechnology, artificial intelligence, and robotics. NEOM also reflects MBS's desire to position Saudi Arabia as a leader in global technological innovation. In addition to economic reforms, Vision 2030 includes significant social changes aimed at modernizing Saudi society. One of the most widely publicized reforms has been the lifting of the ban on women driving. For decades, Saudi Arabia was the only country in the world where women were not allowed to drive. In 2018, under MBS's leadership, this ban was finally lifted, signaling a major shift in the kingdom's treatment of women. Other social reforms have included the easing of restrictions on women's participation in the workforce, as well as their ability to travel without a male guardian's permission. While these changes have been praised internationally, critics argue that they are still too limited, and that Saudi Arabia has a long way to go in terms of gender equality. Entertainment has also been a key area of reform. Saudi Arabia, which had long been known for its conservative social policies, has seen a relaxation of restrictions on cultural events and entertainment. Movie theaters, which had been banned for decades, were reopened, and the kingdom began hosting concerts, sporting events, and other forms of entertainment. These changes are part of MBS's broader efforts to attract tourists and investors to Saudi Arabia. While Vision 2030 has been hailed as an ambitious and transformative plan, it has also faced significant challenges. One of the biggest obstacles is the kingdom's bureaucracy. Saudi Arabia has long been known for its inefficient and cumbersome bureaucracy, and implementing such sweeping reforms has required overcoming significant institutional resistance. Another challenge is the reliance on foreign labor. Saudi Arabia's economy has traditionally depended on millions of foreign workers, particularly in the construction and service industries. Vision 2030 aims to create more jobs for Saudi citizens, but the transition has been slow, and many young Saudis remain unemployed or underemployed. Furthermore, the global pandemic in 2020 posed a major setback for Vision 2030. The economic impact of COVID-19, combined with a sharp drop in oil prices, forced the kingdom to cut back on some of its ambitious projects and reallocate resources to more immediate concerns. While Vision 2030 focuses on domestic reform, MBS's foreign policy has been equally transformative, though far more controversial. As Minister of Defense and later Crown Prince, MBS has pursued an aggressive foreign policy agenda, particularly in the Middle East. His actions have reshaped the region's geopolitics and often drawn international criticism. One of MBS's most significant and controversial foreign policy decisions was Saudi Arabia's intervention in the Yemen civil war. The war began in 2015 when Houthi rebels, who are backed by Iran, seized control of Yemen's capital, Sana'a, and forced the Yemeni government into exile. MBS, as the newly appointed Minister of Defense, led a Saudi-led coalition to intervene in the conflict, aiming to restore the Yemeni government and prevent Iran from gaining influence in the region. However, what was initially expected to be a quick and decisive intervention has turned into a protracted and devastating war. The conflict has resulted in one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with thousands of civilians killed and millions displaced. Saudi Arabia's bombing campaign, coupled with a naval blockade, has been widely condemned for exacerbating the humanitarian disaster, causing widespread famine and disease. Despite the international outcry, MBS has remained committed to the war, framing it as a necessary effort to counter Iranian influence in the region. The conflict in Yemen has become a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, with both sides refusing to back down. In 2017, MBS led a coalition of Gulf countries, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt, in severing diplomatic and economic ties with Qatar. The coalition accused Qatar of supporting terrorism, interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, and maintaining close relations with Iran. The diplomatic crisis escalated quickly, with Saudi Arabia and its allies imposing a blockade on Qatar, cutting off trade and travel links. The blockade lasted for more than 3 years, severely straining relations within the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC. MBS's handling of the Qatar crisis was seen as a bold and assertive move to consolidate Saudi Arabia's leadership in the region. However, it also drew criticism from international observers, who argued that the blockade was counterproductive and only served to deepen divisions in the Gulf. In January 2021, the blockade was lifted as part of a broader reconciliation effort within the GCC. While relations between Saudi Arabia and Qatar have improved since then, the crisis highlighted MBS's willingness to take drastic measures to assert Saudi dominance. Saudi Arabia's rivalry with Iran is one of the most defining features of MBS's foreign policy. The two countries, which represent opposing branches of Islam, Sunni and Shia, have been locked in a struggle for regional influence for decades. Under MBS, this rivalry has intensified, with Saudi Arabia and Iran backing opposing sides in conflicts in Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. However, in a surprising turn of events, Saudi Arabia and Iran announced in 2023 that they would restore diplomatic relations, marking a potential flaw in their long-standing rivalry. The rapprochement was brokered by China, highlighting Beijing's growing influence in the Middle East. While the restoration of ties is a significant diplomatic achievement, it remains to be seen whether it will lead to a broader reduction in tensions between the two regional powers. One of the most significant diplomatic developments in recent years has been the Abraham Accords, a series of agreements brokered by the United States that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab countries, including the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Bahrain. While Saudi Arabia has not yet formally normalized relations with Israel, MBS has signaled that such a move is possible in the future. The normalization of relations between Israel and Arab countries represents a major shift in the region's geopolitical landscape. For decades, Arab states refused to recognize Israel, citing the unresolved Palestinian issue. However, the Abraham Accords have demonstrated that the old paradigm is changing, with many Arab countries prioritizing economic and security interests over the Palestinian cause. MBS has taken a pragmatic approach to the Israel-Palestine conflict, suggesting that normalization with Israel could be on the table if certain conditions are met. This shift reflects MBS's broader strategy of aligning Saudi Arabia with like-minded regional powers to counter common threats, particularly from Iran. While MBS has been praised for his ambitious reform agenda, his leadership has also been marred by allegations of human rights abuses. The most high-profile of these allegations is the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi dissident who was killed inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Jamal Khashoggi, a prominent journalist and critic of MBS, went into self-imposed exile in the United States in 2017, fearing for his safety in Saudi Arabia. From his new base in the US, Khashoggi continued to write critically about the Saudi regime, particularly MBS's crackdown on dissent and his handling of the Yemen war. In October 2018, Khashoggi visited the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to obtain documents for his upcoming marriage. He never left the consulate. After initially denying any involvement, the Saudi government eventually admitted that Khashoggi had been killed inside the consulate, though they claimed it was a rogue operation. The CIA and other intelligence agencies concluded that MBS had personally ordered the operation to kill Khashoggi. The murder sparked international outrage and led to widespread condemnation of the Saudi regime. The incident severely damaged Saudi Arabia's reputation, particularly in the West, where calls for accountability grew louder. Despite the outcry, MBS has faced few consequences for his alleged role in the murder. While some Western leaders, including US President Joe Biden, initially promised to hold MBS accountable, geopolitical realities have largely tempered these promises. The Khashoggi murder is just one example of MBS's crackdown on dissent. Since becoming Crown Prince, MBS has overseen a series of arrests targeting journalists, activists, clerics, and business figures. While the official justification for these crackdowns has been the fight against corruption and extremism, critics argue that MBS is using them as a tool to silence opposition. The crackdown was widely seen as a power move by MBS to neutralize potential rivals and consolidate his authority. In addition to political repression, Saudi Arabia has continued to face criticism for its use of the death penalty and its treatment of migrant workers. Despite some social reforms, such as the easing of restrictions on women, human rights organizations argue that the kingdom remains deeply repressive. Rebranding Saudi Arabia through sports in recent years, Saudi Arabia has turned to sports as a means of improving its global image and attracting foreign investment. This strategy, often referred to as sports washing, involves using high-profile sporting events and sponsorships to distract from the kingdom's human rights abuses and present it as a modern, progressive nation. Under MBS, Saudi Arabia has made significant investments in the world of sports. The kingdom has purchased stakes in major sports teams, most notably acquiring Newcastle United, a Premier League football club. In addition, Saudi Arabia has hosted several high-profile sporting events, including Formula One races, boxing matches, and the Dakar Rally. Perhaps the most controversial of these investments has been the creation of Live Golf, a new golf tour that directly competes with the established PGA Tour. Backed by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, Live Golf has lured top players away from the PGA Tour with lucrative contracts, raising concerns about the impact of Saudi money on the integrity of professional golf. Saudi Arabia has also made bids to host major international sporting events, including the FIFA World Cup. The kingdom's bid to host the 2034 World Cup is part of its broader strategy to position itself as a global hub for sports and entertainment. While Saudi Arabia's sports investments have garnered attention and attracted top talent, they have also drawn significant criticism. Human rights organizations argue that the kingdom is using sports to divert attention away from its repressive policies and human rights abuses. Critics have labeled this strategy sports washing, accusing MBS of using sports to whitewash the kingdom's image. They argue that while Saudi Arabia may present itself as a modern, forward-looking nation through its sports investments, the reality is that it remains deeply authoritarian, with limited political freedoms and widespread repression. Despite the criticism, Saudi Arabia's sports investments have been largely successful in attracting global attention and positioning the kingdom as a major player in the world of elite sports. Under MBS's leadership, Saudi Arabia has increasingly diversified its global alliances, moving beyond its traditional partnership with the United States to forge closer ties with other global powers, particularly Russia and China. For decades, the US-Saudi relationship has been a cornerstone of Saudi foreign policy. The relationship was built on a simple foundation. Saudi Arabia provided the US with a reliable supply of oil, and in return, the US provided the kingdom with security guarantees. However, under MBS, the US-Saudi relationship has become more complicated. While MBS initially enjoyed a close relationship with former US President Donald Trump, who made Saudi Arabia his first foreign visit as president, relations have cooled under the administration of Joe Biden. During his presidential campaign, Biden promised to make Saudi Arabia pariah over the Khashoggi murder and the Yemen war. However, after taking office, Biden faced the geopolitical reality that Saudi Arabia remains a crucial ally in the region, particularly in countering Iran's influence. In July 2022, Biden traveled to Riyadh to meet with MBS, a visit that was widely seen as an attempt to repair relations. While the meeting marked a thaw in US-Saudi relations, it also highlighted the changing dynamics of the relationship. Saudi Arabia is no longer as dependent on the US as it once was, and MBS is increasingly looking to diversify the kingdom's global alliances. One of the most significant shifts in Saudi foreign policy under MBS has been the kingdom's growing ties with Russia and China. Saudi Arabia and Russia have found common ground in their shared interest in controlling global oil prices. In 2016, the two countries entered into an agreement to coordinate oil production, a move that has stabilized prices and strengthened their economic ties. While the relationship has not always been smooth, with the two countries clashing over oil production levels during the COVID-19 pandemic, they have since mended ties and continue to cooperate on energy matters. Saudi Arabia's relationship with China has grown significantly in recent years. China is now Saudi Arabia's largest trading partner, with the two countries cooperating on energy, infrastructure, and technology projects. Saudi Arabia's increasing alignment with Russia and China reflects a broader geopolitical realignment. MBS has made it clear that while the kingdom values its relationship with the US, it is no longer solely dependent on American support. Instead, Saudi Arabia is pursuing a more multipolar foreign policy, seeking to build relationships with multiple global powers. As MBS continues to consolidate his power and push forward with his ambitious reform agenda, the future of Saudi Arabia remains uncertain. While the Crown Prince has undoubtedly brought about significant changes, both domestically and internationally, the long-term success of his vision is far from guaranteed. One of the biggest challenges facing MBS is the Saudi economy. Despite the ambitious goals of Vision 2030, the kingdom remains heavily dependent on oil revenues, and diversifying the economy has proven to be more difficult than anticipated. The global shift towards renewable energy presents a significant threat to Saudi Arabia's long-term economic stability, and the success of Vision 2030 will depend on the kingdom's ability to transition to a more diversified and sustainable economic model. Another major challenge is social reform. While MBS has implemented several high-profile reforms, such as allowing women to drive and easing restrictions on entertainment, Saudi Arabia remains a deeply conservative society. Balancing the need for modernization with the demands of the conservative religious establishment will be a delicate task. Ultimately, MBS's legacy will be defined by whether he can successfully navigate these challenges and achieve his ambitious vision for Saudi Arabia. If Vision 2030 succeeds, MBS will go down in history as the leader who transformed Saudi Arabia into a modern, diversified economy and a global power. However, if the reforms falter, or if the kingdom becomes further embroiled in regional conflicts, his legacy may be one of missed opportunities and unfulfilled promises. As MBS looks ahead to the future, one thing is clear: he is determined to leave his mark on Saudi Arabia and the world. Whether through economic reforms, foreign policy, or sports investments, MBS is shaping the kingdom in his own image, and the world is watching closely to see what the future holds. The conclusion is that Mohammed bin Salman is a leader who defies easy categorization. He is a bold modernizer, willing to challenge the status quo and push Saudi Arabia into the future. At the same time, his leadership has been marked by controversy, human rights abuses, and aggressive foreign policy decisions. As Crown Prince, MBS has undertaken the monumental task of transforming Saudi Arabia's economy and society while navigating a complex and volatile regional landscape. His ambitious Vision 2030 plan seeks to reduce the kingdom's reliance on oil and position it as a global leader in technology, entertainment, and tourism. However, the success of these reforms is far from guaranteed, and MBS faces significant challenges both domestically and internationally. As we look to the future, the story of Mohammed bin Salman is still unfolding. His reign has already reshaped Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, and his vision for the kingdom will continue to have a profound impact on the region and the world for years to come.